Brendan Schaub weighed in. It was over the weekend. Jake Paul put out a challenge basically to Dana White. He put it directly to Dana. Now, it had to do with him, Jake Paul, fighting Conor McGregor, but he was challenging Dana to make the contest. Now, I do wish in hindsight that Jake would have stopped right there. But we all heard this, and Brendan spoke first, and Brendan said, I think Dana's going to have to consider that. In anything that comes up with Paul, Dana, Conor, you can throw it. It's in one ear and out the next. But there was something different about this because Paul is a massive draw. Conor is a massive draw. Now, we got to get real clear because once you start going down one road, you can never come back. If you're in Conor's spot, are you pursuing world championships or are you pursuing big things? You're going to have a little bit of fun on the way. You have to pick one path. But Brendan weighed in and said, I think Dana's going to have to listen to us. Now, I had the same thought as Brendan. Something's different about this. And when I told you a moment ago, I wish that Jake would have made the challenge and laid out. I wish he would have stopped right there. Instead, he threw a few things on it to sweeten the deal. I mean, it was like, I'll never mess with the UFC again, and I'll donate my purse if I win or lose. I mean, there was a few different things that he put on there to where Dana can't just look at it and say, yes. He just can't. It's like, hold on, let's set all this other stuff that you're willing to come to the table with later if negotiation backfire, and let's back up. Jake Paul will come to the UFC to fight Conor McGregor. What weight class? That's all that we really need to discuss at that point. Because that's the only thing that's going to influence Dana one way or the other. Are we doing this or aren't we? He's not going to care about all this other stuff. So there's no reason to put it out there. No reason to have that part of the story. Now, Dana subsequently goes on what I believe is called Impulsive, but it's Logan Paul's podcast. And Dana spoke about this. And Dana said, man, the Paul brothers are big. Jake Paul's 210, 6'1". Conor McGregor was a 145-pounder at one point. These guys are just too big. So Dana gets in a conversation with Logan, who is serving as a surrogate to his brother Jake. And Logan was very honest. Dana said, can he get to 170? That's the highest Conor's ever fought. Can your brother get to 170? And Logan said no. He said, but he can get to 175. So you're going to have to spot us 5 pounds because the conversation, it wasn't no by Dana. Everything that's ever come out of Paul's mouth has been no by Dana. This wasn't no. It wasn't yes. But it wasn't no. And Dana's now asking some of these questions. How low can he get? Now, Dana's either trying to book a fight and starting the negotiation, or he's looking to not do the fight, but proving his point of why. That's open for interpretation. We won't know what came out of Dana's mouth. But when this was first put out there, Brendan thought Dana's going to have to listen. I am with Brendan thinking Dana's going to have to listen. And now you've got Dana who appears to be listening. And it's a very interesting one. I predicted for you guys the night that Mike Tyson fought Roy Jones Jr. We're going to call that the inception of the entertainment boxing matches, the exhibitions. And I told you that night this is going to work. It's not sustainable, but it's got a year. It could have as much as a year and a half. It will run its course and it'll be another 20 years and somebody will drag it back out again. It's an old trick. Nobody reinvented the wheel here. But it's always a question of how long does this last? Why isn't Jake and boxing still the hottest topic out there? You could not talk about boxing. You could not go to a podcast. You could not hear anybody talk about boxing without talking about Jake, even if they wanted to try to dismiss him. And Jake got harder and harder to dismiss, but the topic was still there. I haven't heard a lot of it lately. Why? Is that experiment done? Have we reached that 12 to 18 month part that the smartest mind in the room, me, predicted for you? Or is Jake just looking to do something different? Because the last that Jake talked about, he said, I am going to set my own career on side just for a moment. And then I'm going to do, and he had something he was going to do. And I want to say it was even training that young lady who he's close with. I think it was getting behind and helping her career. I know that Jake has an interest in getting into the promotional side of it. Now, that is an education in and of itself, but if somebody's got some money to burn, you can go ahead and send yourself to school. But I'll just share with you, I don't mind the idea. I don't want any of the other stuff put on. I don't want my purse goes here, or I'll never talk about UFC again. I don't need any of that because I don't want that to be what they're fighting for. There is rules to this game, and if you succeed, even if somebody knows it was through strategic reasons, you don't get punished for them. If you succeed, you get what you want. There is a way to play this game so that you get any fight you want, anytime that you want it. Only very smart guys get it, but if you check all those boxes, the decision makers don't go, I caught you. I see what you're doing. They'll go, you did it. Welcome to the loft. Here's your contract. And I think that Jake Paul is this close to having succeeded. There's always going to be a problem, though, with why isn't he still boxing? Somebody somewhere has the numbers. Somebody somewhere knows whether that works or doesn't. And the fact that it is not rebooked and it isn't moving forward, in fact, it's come to a screeching halt as opposed to the meteoric rise that it once had, is going to be a clue to the next guy looking to go in the pay-per-view business with you. Jake might have an answer. I could have it all wrong, and it could be by choice. Maybe he was offered 2-3 fights. I don't know. I'm sharing for you when you're calculated and tactical like Jake is, he needs to be able to answer that question too. When somebody's sitting around looking left and right and going, okay, you're a pay-per-view star. That's a totally different animal. You do not have to be a world champion to be a pay-per-view star. You do not have to be a number one contender to be a pay-per-view star. Our biggest stars, Conor McGregor, George Masvidal, and anybody with the last name of Diaz only got one thing in common, which is they did not win their last fight. They didn't even win the one before that. They're our biggest stars. They're the ones that you want, not the guy with the shiny trinket, the beautiful record, or the gold belt. A lot of times they go together, but if they don't, you can only choose one. Take the star. Jake and Conor works, guys. That fight works for me. And you know what else? Jake's not an easy night out. That's why that fight didn't work 2 years ago when Jake first started saying it. This is why you now have got Dana and Brendan and Chael in a little bit of a different discussion here. Turns out Paul is a badass. And he is big, and that does change things. And he was a high school wrestler in a damn hard state of Ohio. There's a lot of boxes that get checked here, and he is taking a massive risk that he's willing to go out and do and even part with his own money. Not to mention reputation, not to mention ego. He's not denying he's bigger. Yes, I'm bigger. This guy's got a bunch of experience. I got a few pounds. I think that my pounds make up for the deficit in experience, and I'm willing to walk in front of the world and test that theory. Okay, I'm in. That works for me. It does. It works. Now, the first to complain that the Nevada State Athletic Commission licensed a 50-0 professional named Floyd Mayweather against a 0-0 amateur named Conor McGregor. I was the first to bring that to your attention. Now we're going to have to ask them to do the same thing. Floyd had like 6 world belts and Conor never put on a pair of gloves. Conor's got 3 world belts. But Jake isn't completely without defense. Jake's been in there with 2 world champions. Beat them both. Then you bring the wrestling into it. We've all seen the dedication. We can all see how hard he could work. It's not the hardest story to tell. Jake needs to help. He needs to get in front of this thing. He needs to explain why he isn't booked and pursuing boxing if his numbers are what we believe that they were. But he can solve that. Jake can solve a lot of problems. Jake's a smart guy. Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor in the UFC. Wow. That's normally something I would laugh at. That is something I would dismiss. You now have my attention.